Another class, another section, and today we're going to be looking at the part of research sampling, right? And then please, what do you understand by research sampling? Anyone? Anyone who can, what do you understand by research sampling?
Good afternoon. So,
Afternoon.
research sampling, it has to do with identifying and selecting a subset or a population for your study where you're going to be collecting your data. This could be a group of people that you might be interviewing, or um, yeah.
Okay, that is great. Another person? Anyone again?
Um, my side, research sample is when is a process of selecting a group from the population which going to test in line with your research question and your research objective, so that you can give an entire understanding on how the population is, in terms of how the population looks like. So you want to test the sample that has the characteristics that represent the entire population.
Oh, that's great. So, anyone again who wants to try? Okay, from what I can get from Yvonne and Matlon, it's all about, it involves a process of selecting. Meaning that what? And that process also needs to meet some level of characteristics, some attributes. You need to have some attribute that you are looking for, you want to select from that population, which will enable you, which will assist you to provide, to address your research objectives, which in total, you need to address now your research main aim, and that is sampling, right? Thank you so much for that. Now, when we take it a little bit further on this, what is research sampling? And here, it says a process of selecting a subset, right? Which was also mentioned by Yvonne, that it involves you selecting a subset. And this subset comes from the larger population of your study. Meaning what? That you have, and then Matlam also made mention of, you cannot make generalization from that subset. Thank you for that. That is what research sampling is all about. Now, it assists a researcher in drawing a conclusion, in drawing findings, in drawing insight from a larger population. Now, instead of, due to some constraint, due to some issues, you might not be able to get the entire population. What do? You take some percentage, some from the entire population. Let's say right now you want to conduct a study, student using what drives or what motivates students using generative AI, social media, or any of those technological innovation. Now, when you say students can be massive, right? But it's okay, fine. I won't be able to get the entire population of the students. What do I do? What can represent the entire population, which cannot be worked out through statistical calculation? That okay, I have a 10,000 students. You can't be able to get each one of them to participate in this study. But now through your sampling, you're able to get some percentage of those students, which can literally mean that whatever they give to you can be generalized to the entire population of those 10,000 students. But all in all, the number of people that you engage in the study are not that 10,000, but there are lesser number of people. But the findings can say, okay, these people that engage in this study, whatever they say, it can be applied to the rest of the population. And that is what your sampling is all about. Okay. Now, and then there are also the importance of sampling. So now, that being said, so sampling is very unique, it's very important because of what? It's cost effective. Instead of the amount of the amount of time it will take you to get the entire population can be massive. But through your sampling, that can be reduced to a reasonable number. Okay? And that is your sampling. And now, which also brings about flexibility, which also brings about ability to manage those numbers, and then also be able to make generalization out of those few numbers that you have selected. So in this presentation, this moment, we're going to be able to understand what is sampling methods, different sampling methods, right? Understand sampling techniques and the procedures, and then be able to discuss sampling biases and ethical consideration when it comes to sampling. And that is the makeup of our presentation. Now, because we have established what sampling is all about, now there are different kinds of methods of sampling, different types of sampling. There are different kinds of sampling research sampling that you can see. Now, sampling are grouped into probability and non-probability sampling. Now, so when we talk about probability sampling, what are we talking about? We're talking about that it involves a random selection of participants in a given in giving every sample size an equal chance to participate. Now, you have your students in that 10,000. All of them are eligible. All of them qualify to participate in this study, right? But you are selecting this number. However, your selection of this number, that everyone in this study, because they are students, they are qualified. There's no any other criteria that you want to use to distinguish, to make separation. They possess that because they are students, and that closes the argument. And that is what we can see the probability sampling. In non-probability sampling, it provides a non-random selection based on some defined criteria. The other one, everyone is qualified to participate, right? In your probability, okay? But in your non-sampling method approach, there are criteria in these 10,000 students. All of them will not participate because not all of them meets or will meet your defined criteria, which allows for convenience in making making data collection or in conducting data gathering in a very simplified way and easy. Because of what? You're not looking at the entire population to qualify for that. You're looking at specific number. Let's say now in this student, okay, so okay, we are looking at people who are doing, let's say, postgraduate. So you find out that when you're saying that your criteria is people who are doing postgraduate, that is to show that many number of students will be excluded. So you're looking at that criteria of what? If you're doing postgraduate, you are qualified to participate. The other one have no that kind of criteria definition. So within each of these sampling method, sampling techniques, sampling types, kinds, there are different types among them. So we're talking about sampling, probability sampling, being that it's a random sampling technique, right? What are we saying? Please, can you mute your mic? Please mute your mic. Okay, so in this case, what happened is that probability sampling have different types, and here we say one of them is what? Simple random sampling. Who can explain to us what we mean by simple random sampling? Hello, guys. Am I alone?
No, Prof. We are here.
What is simple random sampling?
So, from my side, how I think of it is that in this case, the researcher doesn't put a criteria in terms of selecting the participant. Will just randomly select postgrad, undergrad, and as well as workers. It's not informed as by the criteria.
Okay, so in this case right now, it says here that what? Sampling everyone have the chance to be part of the study. So because you have defined your population to be students, right? All students of all categories will be what? Involved, as the name simplified by what? Probability sampling. No defined criteria. And it also have an advantage. And the advantage means what? That equal chance. It has that kind of representative, and it's unbiased. That you are not skewed in as some people, that you are not skewed in terms of you making your selection. There's no any element of biasness in it, because everyone, irrespective of their class of study, their level of study, their knowledge, their understanding of the topic, and everything, they are all can be selected. You can use any of them, which is also used, which easy to adopt, and it reduces what? Bias. The disadvantage is that what? A total size is required. So in this case right now, you are expected to cover the entire population that you have selected. Remember, we're talking about now sampling, right? Now, in this sampling, before we proceed, there is element of what? There is total. There is in a sampling, we have what is called total population and sample size. So in a total population, what we mean that what? All the 10,000 students is the total population. Now, within that 10,000 students, you can now do what is called as what is called a sample size. Mean what? You have to map it. That out of, I can't be able to get these 10,000 students, but how many can I get to form a kind of that can use to form a representative of the entire population, and that is your what? Your sample size. So when you have done these two things, first of all, get your total population. Within the total population, you get your sample size. Are we following?
Yes.
Determine your population. Who are the people that will be involved in this study? I'm looking at teachers in a selected the teachers in Northwest or teachers in Mabato, high school teachers. That's the population of my study. Within this population, who are the teachers you're looking at, the schools you're looking at? I'm going to select schools. So by you selecting those schools, what are you trying to do? You have limit the number. In these selected schools, I'm going to use all the teachers in that school. That is what? Your simple random sampling. You are getting your population, which is what? Mabato. Your sample size becomes what? A selected schools, which can be 2, 3, 4 schools. And in those 2, 3, 4 schools, all the schools teachers are covered. That is your simple random sampling, which also may be difficult to use in a large population. We also have the one that is called systematic sampling. It allows the researcher to select every tenth of the population, of the total population. You know what? In your total population, you group them in tenths, right? That every 10th person will be involved. And one of the benefits is that it allows evenly selection of population size and the sample, and it's much more efficient. However, the period of selection can bring about bias. You are selecting, but you don't like this one, you can exclude it. What if now the person that you selected have no knowledge of your study? That's also the bigger part of the bigger challenge of it. When you're taking the 10th person on that group, then if that 10th person have no clue of what you're talking about, that alone jeopardize the amount of the quality of data you will collect. So also we have what they call it stratified sampling. In this sampling, it involves the division of the population into strata, into subgroups, and a sample is drawn from every stratum. For example, students can be drawn from all the modules, all the courses. Now it's okay, fine, I'm looking at students. Within these students, there are faculties, there are schools, there are departments, right? And even in this department, there are levels. You have undergrad, you have your postgrad. So what do you do in this stratified sampling? Okay, I'm going to select from every department, which means that what there is equal representation in every strata, which also can what deepen knowledge about the population is required. So in that case, right now you need to understand the capability of all your of the population, of the subgroups and everything. Guys, are we following?
Yes, Prof.
So who can help us to explain what you understand by cluster sampling? cluster sampling. It allows the researcher to divide the population into clusters and select the cluster randomly. So in this cluster, you put everyone into clusters, right? But every cluster will have a chance of being represented. It also can be used when you are doing a large study. Also, it can have element of biasness, which can also prone to what? To error in making your actual selection. That is what is within your cluster sampling. Also, we have guys, any questions so far? Now we are moving over to non-probability sampling. As we alluded from earlier, that non-probability sampling have everything to do with non-random sampling. It's an opposite of what? Probability sampling. That what there are not everyone in the entire population, in the entire sample size. You have established your population. Now you have made your sample size. Not everyone in your sample size have equal chance of being represented. That what there are for anyone to be represented, to be involved in the study, there is element of what? Meeting a set of criteria. If you don't meet this criteria, you are out. So in this case right now, what are we talking about here? That what? There are different types of non-probability sampling. One of them is convenience sampling. It selects participants on account of convenience. They are available, they are reachable, they are approachable. That because you went to the mall, anyone inside the mall can be reachable. So in that case right now, that is quick, easy, and cost effective. However, lack of population representation and self-selection biasness can play. Because of convenience, okay, look at people who are your friends, who are approachable, but not because they have the knowledge to provide the required insight you are looking for and to enrich the data you are collecting. So that can, in you making decision, can be biased. And also there is another one called what? Judgmental or purposeful sampling. In this, being as a purpose, like it involves the selection based on the researcher's discretion on those who possess the required criteria. So what are we talking about here? You cannot use your personal wisdom, personal discretion to determine people who will be involved. So in this case right now, this can be expert in the area. Okay, I'm looking at using generative AI, right? And it's okay, fine. I'm looking at people who have used it. So among students, I'm not looking at all students. I'm looking at all the students who have an expert knowledge of this. That's the people you are targeting or you want to use for the study. So your judgment is based on experts, some selecting experts who possess the knowledge in that area of your research, which is much more advantageous in terms of getting a targeted people as a knowledge criteria. I'm looking at generative AI, but I found out that okay, students cannot give me sufficient knowledge because not all students have used it. But who can be better positioned to do that? We're looking at academians, right? Who are probably they do research and so on and so forth. But in this within academians, no, not all academians have used it. Let me look at people who have actually used generative AI in their task, whether academic or non-academic task. That alone is based on what? Your judgment, which can also lead to being subjective and what? Bias. Also have a snowball sampling refer from one person to another, meaning what? That you want to conduct your study. So now, because you have your samples, you have determine your sample size. But you say, okay, fine, we're gonna follow snowball sampling technique, meaning what? That one another person, anyone involved in the study will recruit another. Now you come to me, you engage me in your study, I will recruit another person for you, and then that person will recruit another person for you to be part of the study, and then it's continuous snowballing, balling from one person to another. Which in this case right now, what I'm trying to do, it can be used in a situation of anonymity, right? Nobody, people who are willing, right? People who volunteer, people who can be linked, who can be contacted, people who share that experience, right? Let's say looking at people, the effect of this in their okay. Let's say example, you're looking at the role of generative AI in increasing exam malpractice, right? Being that is that is your topic, that's area you're working on, right? You're able to get one person who have used generative AI to engage in exam malpractice. The person will link it to the person, another person who have used it. The person will link to another person who have used it, and they continue. However, remember that this non probability sampling are mostly mostly been applied in a qualitative research, right? Which we talked about in the previous section. Okay, and that is it. So another one. So one of the limitations is that what it limited enriching or connecting with others, and also being biased. Now we have a quota sampling, ensure that all characteristics, attributes of the populations are represented. Quota system, which in this case right now, it ensures that a certain percentage of the characteristics are represented in the study. Because you have defined the criteria, what you need to do to based on quota level of selection, you are looking at what? That a certain percentage of the characteristic are represented when you're looking at in your study at the whole. We can also bring diversity in your sampling. We can also bring about biasness, and then not being randomly selected. Any question, guys? Are you still there?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Okay, if you say you are there, fine. But I feel like I'm alone. So now we are at the level of what? Um, Level of sampling techniques and procedures. These are steps in designing a sampling plan, which involves you determining the population, the sample frame, which is sample size, choosing the sampling method, the sample size, and then executing the sample process, which determine the sample size, determining the factors and the tools. What are the factors? The population size, the margin of error, the confidence text, and what? Variability. These are different ways through which you can establish your sampling technique. And what are the factors here? We're talking about the factors what? Like your population size, your margin of error, confidence confidence level, and what? Variability. What about the tools, which can be the sample size calculator? When in this case right now, there is a table that was designed by Craig and Morgan. These techniques enables you to carry out your sampling technique and being able to do what? To determine your sample size. Are we there?
Yes.
Okay. So when you want to determine your sample size, there are two things that should factor in. There are factors and there are tools. In that, you need to understand the population size, margin of error, confidence level, and the vulnerability. And under your tools, you can use the things like your to calculate out of these 10,000 persons, how many do I really need that will help me to form overall generalization of your findings. So when you look at Craig and Morgan's table of 1970, when you look at that table will provide you different sampling size and the sampling and the sample size. So in that case, it's gonna show you if you let's say you have 10,000 as your total sample, and then look at your sample size, and that makes the whole thing with also involve calculation in it. So this example, this Craig and Morgan is a example. There are others that you can always use to determine your sample size of your study. Okay, we should have talked about this before, but let's also look at them one after the another. So what your hello guys. Hello
Yes.
guys.
Yes, Prof.
What is a sample size? What is a sample size, guys? No one is there. Okay, fine. Now we have talked about the total sample. We're talking about the sampling size and different kinds of sampling. Now we're talking about now the element of what? Bias and error in a sampling. It's very, very important for you to understand this. Now, sampling bias, it happens when some groups of populations are excluded or overrepresented in a more systematic way. So when some group are excluded, overrepresented systematically, that becomes your what? Being biased in your sampling. Types of errors in it can be selection bias. You exclude some people systematically, intentionally, being biased of what they stand for. For that reason, you're able to exclude them. Non-response bias. Some individuals are not responding. Because they are not responding, what do? Okay, fine, I'm going to exclude them out. The strategies to maximize, to minimize your sampling bias can be using random sampling method. Because when you use a random sampling method, remember what it's all about. That everyone have an equal chance of being represented. In this case, right now, nobody will say I was excluded, and so on and so forth. Okay. Also, which ensure that yes, and then also increasing your response rate. That can also help you to do what? To minimize your sampling bias. In this case, what I'm trying to do is ensure that some subset is involved. In this case, right now, instead of looking at your response rate in this case right now, which means what? Having some incentives, right? Because people, there's that element of what? Non-response bias. People are not responding, right? How do you, it can also maneuver that through what? Implementing things like what? Incentives, providing some incentives to your participant, which also brings about increasing that response rate. And then also doing a personalized invite. Guys, remember, these are things you can also face in terms of in your research. But you need to remember this thing, that this is how you can be able to mitigate, to maneuver, mitigate some of these challenges, which as a result of what comes into sampling bias. Also, implementing personalization, having what? A personalized invite, multiple contact attempt, which what? You can also do reminders, make a follow-up, do some phone calls, write some emails, and if it's where you can get, if where you can get to the people face to face, you walk into their space, for them to be able to respond to your questionnaire, to your research, to your data collection. Okay. And then also confidentiality assurance, ensure that their response of each response are confidential, meaning what? That whatever they will provide, their response will not be discussed, will not be disclosed to anyone, or their names and their particulars will not be tag associated to their response. That can also assist in terms of increasing the response rate. So be clear and concise. Keep the survey clear, brief, and readable. Don't make your questions to be ambiguous. Don't make your questions to be confusing, difficult to understand, and so on and so forth. When these things are done, it can increase your response rate of your of your of your study, of your respondents. Okay. Then also in line with minimizing the sampling bias, using a weighing adjustment process, which is used to correct imbalances or any kind of bias. In this case, right now, underrepresentation and overrepresentation can be can be used. So now, what do you do you can allow push for overrepresentation, and they have to do what to mitigate any kind of bias or underrepresentation in your study. Any issues, guys? The answer will be no. The answer will be no issue. Okay, fine. So now there are ethical consideration in your sampling. For you to have a sampling that is ethical, have ethical correctness, that deals with any form of ethical issues, there is a need for you to do what? Ensuring representativeness. Have an accurate sampling method. Have an accurate sampling size. Do away with any form of misrepresentation in your sampling. Anything that can lead to that, please push it aside. Also have an informed consent. Let the people be informed, and they will be willing to participate, and then have also the option of opting out in case they don't feel comfortable in the study. So let them have the option voluntarily to participate, and then also have a window that they can opt out anytime they feel like I am no longer comfortable in responding to these questions, in filling your questionnaire, and so on and so forth. They can be able to opt out. So another aspect of when you're making in your sampling aspect that you should, the ethical consideration you should put in mind, that what confidentiality is very, very important. Make sure that your personal information, in this case right now, you should be able to follow the POPI Act principle process to ensure that what any personal information has been protected. Let's say you're conducting an interview, right? And then people's voice can be recognized, right? Ensure that what that very data that you collected is protected. Let's say they're able to say their name. Make sure that their names and everything, any form of identity that can be used to link back the question to them. Make sure that what it can be removed or confidentially what are being protected. And then this is also very important. Remember, when you are writing in your proposal right now, we need to put all this into your proposal. All this ethical aspect of in your proposal, section that talks about ethical consideration, and these are things you need to be able to provide a detailed information on how you are going to handle your participants and their data. Okay, challenges and limitations of sampling comes what? Common challenges in this is what? Implementing sampling. In this case right now, gathering complete data. It's always challenging that you say, okay, out of 10,000, I'm looking at 350 participants. Getting those 350 participants is always challenging. Let's say in a quantitative study. In a qualitative study, the same thing. You want to interview 20, 10 persons, 15 persons. Getting people to be part of that is always what? Is always challenging. And also managing non-responses. In this case, whether it's on a qualitative, that's okay, people will say, okay, fine, that's okay, I'll be part of this study. Now they are not coming to the part, they're not showing up. You send emails, okay, fine, send your interview question by email. I will respond. But they are not responding, even when you have informed them before you start the study, or when you have not even informed them, right? And when they see those emails, they don't respond. They see those links for them to click to complete your questionnaire. They don't click those links. Even when they click, they don't respond to the questions. That's one of the what common challenges that many people are facing when it comes to what engaging with your sample size. In this case, your participants of your study, and the limitations of different sampling method, high and time consuming, right? And then probability and bias. It can be time consuming, and that is the reason why you need to start. You need to work very hard. If I were to say, you need to work very hard. People who are doing first year right now in their program, to make sure that let's assume that your proposal is being approved ethically. That next year is when you are collecting your data, because of what? It can be time consuming to collect your data, even when no matter the kind of sampling type you are using. In either of whether probability or non-probability, whether convenient, whether random, whether simple, whether this, whether that cluster, it is time consuming. So data engaging with your participants is time consuming, and then it can also lead to some kind of biasness in terms of, in this case right now you're working in that department. You want to use the same people in that department, can also lead to some form of biasness, that people may not be able to be truthful to their response, or something of that, or they will not be able to respond because they don't like your face or something of that nature. They don't like your name. There are many things that can lead to some kind of biasness. They don't like your study you are doing, and so many other things. They are not interested. They don't have time. So how to reduce these common challenges? Mixed method can be used, right? When you're using quantitative and qualitative interview and questionnaire, that can also help to balance, to confront some of these challenges. Also, do a pilot texting with your participant. Also, we in this case right now, that is texting, not texting. Okay, in a way that what you value before you go to the field to collect your data, what you do is to collect some small sample, right? Distribute that questionnaire, share your questionnaire, let people respond. That also will help you to strengthen your instrument of your data. Also, use statistical corrections, sampling, weighing, adjustment, and others to make sure that what you get the right sample size, you get the right people, the right expert, the right the to get the things right for yourself, and towards getting the right data. Because if you can to get the right people, you can get the right data, the insightful data that can enable you to do what, to answer, to address, to respond to each and every your research objectives and your questionnaire, and be able to do what, get a deeper findings from your study, which will definitely inform decision making in practice. Now, all these things that we have talked about, there's one thing which we didn't talk about, and that is what? Citation and references. Now, remember that it is very important for you to be able to do all these things. And so I've seen situations whereby people write this sampling, no matter in terms of sampling in general, the components of their sampling, without citation, which is what? Not good. Because whatever study the any type you are choosing, people have done similar thing of that. You can also cite people who have used similar technique, similar type of sampling approach, right? To do or to boost the reader's confidence that the choice you have made is the right choice, and so on and so forth. And that will also lead to what? Element of repeatability of your studies and trustworthiness. So provide citation in every level of your writing, or this component of your sampling. Ensure that you provide enough citation, sufficient citations in every section of your what? Of your sampling. That is very, very important, which automatically you provide the reference list to that effect. And I said this last time, the best way for you not to miss out on any document that you have cited in the in-text in your in-text citation is to use your footnote and all those automatic referencing tools, so you don't mix out on any of them. So when you use your footnote, automatically when you cite, automatically deposit those authors or that very author in your referencing list. That alone will remove any kind of missing out from any form of references, as case may be. Also very important as well, remember I've talked about in previous sections about the WWH. We know about it, right? What, why, and how. So very important. Each and every component of your sampling that you discuss in your proposal, please be able to tell the reader what is that very sampling is all about. Why are you in that? Now you have made your choice among the types of two types of sampling. You use probability, right? Why do you choose probability, not non-probability? And then be able to provide how it's going to be used, how you are going to use it in your study, and the benefit to derive in your study. That is very important. So each and every section of your sampling, please discuss the what. Now you have made you discuss the what. In this case right now, let's say you're talking about there are different kinds of sampling. You put your citations, you list them, give a brief discussion on each of them. Brief, I say brief. For this study will use probability sampling. Then now you can now go deeper into probability sampling, right? Explain what it is, provide all the necessary sampling, and then citation, sorry, and then adding your voice. When you have done that, why do you choose probability sampling rather than non-probability sampling? You provide enough justification based on now in support to your choice, based on other people who have used it. You can bring them in according to Mama so and so person who did so and so study. Also, that focus on students, that focus on this and focus on that. You bring them in to tell the reader that what your choice is not based on personal excitement, right? But based on what that people have used it to do similar study. You provide those citations, and now you're able to justify, that, right? And then provide how you are going to use it. Many times students can always go to in doing the what, make the definition, the explanation of the context, right? But when it comes to the part of them doing the why and doing the how, they are lost. So please always spend time to do the why and the how, and that will enable you to do what, to get to get down with that very aspect of your discussion. So in closing, these are different tools that you can use in any of these sampling, whether quantitative or qualitative. Okay, and in conclusion, sampling assists researchers to minimize bias, ethical challenges. However, ensure that a thoughtful and rigorous sampling is done when you are making your choice. Thank you. Any question, guys? Any question?
Nothing from my side, Prof.
Okay. So I think if nothing from your side, is that the same with others?
Prof, maybe